podcast you're about to listen to is from a book series on post-qualitative, new materialist, and critical posthumanist research. I'm Karen Murris and chief editor of this new Routledge series. You can find it on the following website, www.postqualitativeresearch.com.
Dylan, we're having a conversation about your chapter in the book, which is very exciting. To sit with a cup of coffee and listen. And your chapter title is When Ancestors Are Included in Ocean Decision and Meaning Making.
Yeah. It's nice that we get to do this together, both because we are such close friends and also we got to be in the same book together. And I'm very happy I get to do this because it was through you and Anya and Viv, also authors in the book, that I learned about hydrofeminism. So yeah, I'm very happy to be doing this with you. So
I have to just say though, can I just say that the whole idea of feminism has, for me, expanded because of your relationship with us as well. It's not as if there was this idea of hydrofeminism and then suddenly it got discovered when we met you, but it was actually it's becoming something else, and it has become something else since I've met you.
Wow.
And I'm grateful.
That's amazing to hear. Because I always feel like I'm with the wiser sea witches in the sea. So my chapter really looks at an animation we made, which was based on a play called Lalelo Lwandle, which has been touring since 2019, and the play got picked up in a big way across the country, and it deals with all the intangible heritages of the ocean, but all the other ways in which people relate to the ocean that often don't enter into courtrooms or into justice processes, and also don't enter into classrooms. And in our research in the Coastal Justice Network and in the One Ocean Hub, we've discovered the many ways in which the ocean is kind of dominated by marine science, and the governments and the politicians have in their ear marine scientists whispering to them, but no one else. We're the sociologists, we're the artists, we're the sangomas or the traditional healers, and we're the ancestors. And I think the touring of the play and what it brought up, the play after each play were public tribunals where people could share their relationships to the sea. It kind of was this extra legal space that wasn't a traditional courtroom. It really allowed for a shift in how we thought about the ocean. So I start the chapter really with the court judgment against Shell. Small-scale fishers bravely took on the government and took on the big oil and gas giant Shell, and they took them to court. And the animation and the play was used as evidence, kind of accompanying their very strong affidavits. And I don't seem to claim in the chapter that it was the animation or the play that really won the case. It really was the hard work of small-scale fishers and indigenous leaders. But it was a question around how can artists be in service of indigenous movements and provide a way to show how knowledge is porous, which is something we learned from hydrofeminism. And I learned from you.
Say that question again slowly.
That knowledge is porous and plural, and it's like an ecosystem with many parts that interact and are relational or have relationships. And so how do we hold that reality in a space like a courtroom where evidence needs to be kind of black and white and very clear? And so what we did as artists was to try and hold some of the ephemeral, intangible, spiritual relationships and see if we could create evidences that could also be shown in court of these sometimes invisible relationships and invisible knowledges. And they're not invisible because you can't see them or can't interact them. It's just that colonialism really has taken most of the airtime. So I thought maybe it'd be nice if you could just read the Judge Blum's judgment, which I start the chapter with.
Yeah, definitely. I accept that the customary practices and spiritual relationship that the applicant communities have with the sea may be foreign to some and therefore difficult to comprehend. How can ancestors reside in the sea, and how can they be disturbed, may be asked. It is not the duty of this court to seek answers to those questions. We accept that those practices and beliefs exist.
And
that's extremely powerful, actually.
Yeah.
What comes to mind for me is how you just asked a question about how we can think about knowledge and the untangible. And then it's listening to this judge's response or message also raises that issue about how questions work. How can ancestors reside in the sea, and how can they be disturbed, may be asked. It's also like putting forward the kinds of questions that usually get asked, and then their answers become the knowledge systems that can make a judgment on something.
Yeah. And it's usually those questions that kind of silence other ways of knowing. You know, oh no, how can there be ancestors in the sea? Or how can the seismic survey for oil and gas affect like ghosts, basically, was what some people might say in a very callous way. But what was really powerful is that the judge, reading the affidavits of the fishers and also watching the animation and listening to the play, could see that the relationships between something like fishing, customary practices around fishing or accessing the ocean, are deeply cultural practices. They're not just the ways of feeding your family or buying, catching and selling fish. They have deep spiritual relationships, and the knowledge is fluid. It can't just sit in one form. It has many kind of parts. And so in this chapter, I really try and show some of the things that we've learned through public storytelling and through creating spaces, like a third space for knowledge to be shared, and to grow new testimonies and new affidavits, a space for new knowledge to kind of come to the fore and enter into these justice processes. Because what's happening in South Africa is that there's this big rush for oil and gas. There's this big rush to expand marine protected areas in a country which is a lot of what your research looks at, where things like the Group Areas Act of Apartheid really decided where people should and shouldn't go in relation to the sea, and were forcibly removed, oftentimes for conservation or for creating space for tourism and industry. And so we are about to enter into another wave where a new marine spatial planning policy has gone ahead of deciding who does what as far as business activities, as far as economies in the sea, the blue economy. It's called the Marine Spatial Planning Bill. And because there isn't the sensitivity to other ways of knowing the sea, and they're using mainly logarithms and algorithms to decide who gets to access what, these systems are inherently biased, and they don't think about these kinds of knowledges. And my big concern is how is this not going to just repeat the Group Areas Act? Because the people are shifted in relation to policy, and I mean in relation to access and class. So that's the kind of setting of the paper. And then I do some very careful positionality work, because I'm dealing with sacred knowledge, and my partner in the project, Mpumi Ntombeni, is a Sangoma and a traditional healer and a Zulu woman, and who received the story. And I tell how we unpack the story that was given to us by sacred healers who said this must go to government. And yeah, I wondered if you wanted to just maybe read a synopsis of the story.
Yeah.
Where it starts after death.
After death.
Yeah.
After death, when your family buries you under the ground, the rain compresses your body and squeezes out your soul until you are born into the dream world, where you swim in Isihlanjana.
Yeah.
Isihlanjana. You become Bantu Norhlanjana.
Anyway.
You are a young ancestor. Yeah. As your soul swims downstream, you swim. You are called by the songs of ancestors, and you are called towards the deep sea. As you swim down, you grow older as an ancestor until you eventually get down to the deep sea, where the ancestors dwell, Abantu Abadala. They know exactly who you are and which clan you belong to. There, with your ancestors, you gain all the memories, songs, and dreams of your people and learn many secrets. You stay down there for a very, very long time. Dylan, you must read that last part as we end. Okay. Until one day.
Until one day, when the matters of people on land are pressing and you're needed to share your knowledge, you hear a new song, the song of your next mother. She sings to you to accompany her, and you swim up to her voice until you float out of the water and are carried by a cloud back to the land, until eventually your soul rains down on the land and your next mother drinks you. There in the small ocean inside her belly, you grow and grow, only to be born again. We almost out of time, but I just wanted to say that's what ended up happening is they won this case, which I think I said, and this animation can be seen online. It's on YouTube, Ndlelo Yokuphila, The Soul's Journey, and the chapter really tries to track also the making of it and how do we sensitively do work with sacred knowledge. And one of the key messages is this idea of meaning making as a form of research, that making, art making, it comes from Aaron Manning's idea that making is a form of theorizing and thinking. And they allowed me to publish an infinity sign as the hyphen between the meaning and the making. And because they're kind of umbilically linked, you know, the more you make as an artist, the deeper meaning you discover. And as your meaning gets deeper, the making gets richer. And that meaning making and artists in solidarity with education and law and expanding it and making it more porous might be something we could really learn from the hydrofeminist space, because so many people are practicing arts-based research, practice-based research. Yeah, so I think we're out of time, but that's kind of roughly what the chapter is about. And
can I have the last word?
Yeah, please. Of course.
I just want to say that when you started, you spoke about like other knowledge systems and knowledge systems that are silenced, or knowledge systems that don't necessarily get the same amplification as dominant ones. And I really felt in this conversation this feeling of sitting in a courtroom, you know, where which voices become part of testimony or evidence or truth or decision making on what is right and what is wrong. And I feel like a thread was very strong in the way that you were speaking about the opportunity of art making, of meaning making. And I'm just so grateful for the way in which you're able to speak about it being another language or another set of knowledge system that can be a part of the melody of
beautiful
of what we're listening to in terms of knowledge, you know, so what we see, what we sense in our body's response to art and storytelling. So thanks, Dill.
Thank you. I love making music with you.
Oh.
When you say melody.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. If you would like to know more about this chapter, please visit the website www.postqualitativeresearch.com. And please stay tuned for future podcasts.